So today let's talk about technology. So a lot of people misunderstand technology when they hear about it because generally what they think about are electronics, right? Your iPhone, your Windows Phone, whatever it is, your tablet. But technology is really anything that makes life easier. And so we have to take into account that there are offline kinds of technology. But today, really, there are three types of technology that you can put into your practice, and we'll talk a little bit about each one. The first one we'll talk about is the category of your offline technologies. And those are your technologies that deal with papers, with notebooks, with graphing paper, that kind of thing, where you're putting together charts and things like that by hand. Then you have your electronic. And this is the first generation, really, because this is where we start to see computers being used more. We start to see laptops and tablet computers, that kind of thing. We start to see digital in a practice. And the last category we're going to talk about is your online technology. And this builds on the electronic, but it's really its own category because it's so different and unique in terms of process and what it can do that it's really its own separate category. But let's start with offline. When we talk about offline things, we'll talk about and we'll break these things down really into four categories. We'll talk about scheduling, documentation, and we'll talk about billing. And finally, we'll talk about practice management. This is interesting because a lot of softwares out there today will specifically say that the first three are what practice management is. Basically, they'll call it practice management, but they'll say that practice management is the combination of those three things with reporting. But really, the reporting should be built into all three, so it should actually be included. So practice management is its own category. So when we talk about offline technology, the examples here are going to be things like, we're going to call it notebook appointments, right? That's when you're scheduling appointments using an actual book, right? An actual bookkeeper keeps track of your appointments. That's when you're going to be doing paper charts, right? So you've got, let's call them paper templates, paper charts. That's when you're doing your documentation basically by hand. So you've got, a chart in front of you, you're writing your notes down, and that's kind of, going into a paper file, like a manila folder. It's going into, if you've ever been into a doctor's office, obviously, you've seen this in the back of the office, at least when I was growing up. The doctor's offices had these huge cabinets that covered, in some cases, the whole office with these manila folders that were kind of laid out throughout. And so, they'd definitely spend a few minutes there, but they'd go through, they'd find your file, pull it out, it would have your whole history in there, it would have anything that was faxed to them, if it's your primary care physician, or anything like that. So you're going to have your paper chart there. And then, of course, we're going to talk about HCFAs. So offline, you're going to be doing HCFAs. And so that's going to be, where you're actually filling out those check boxes on the, generally it's red paper or red formatted paper. So it might be a format you print out onto paper in your office, or you just get a stack of HCFAs. Today it's CMS 1500. So you've got your HCFAs. And then, of course, for practice management, generally what you see is something close to what you're doing with scheduling. So either a notebook or something like Post-its, right? So you've got that situation where you're really, when we talk about practice management, we're talking about task management, or what we refer to at POI is workflow management, right? Where we're actually wanting to be able to assign tasks associated with certain aspects of someone's job so that we can actually measure performance. And that becomes critical if you really want to take your practice anywhere from a single provider clinic, getting by and maybe making let's say 5% of your revenue as profit, you're really going to want to push beyond beyond the offline. So let's take a look at the offline here. So together we have our notebook appointments, our paper charts, our HICFAs, and then of course our notebook and our Post-its for practice management. So anybody who's been in practice more than, let's say, 10 years will be very familiar with this, because they either still have some part of this, or they still have it completely, or they've gone electronic and have experienced that in the past, and so they know what that is, right? And we'll come back to that in a little bit, and we'll talk more about the pain there. We'll go to the electronic next. So what the electronic age did was it actually created the ability to use different systems that excelled at different things, right? So you might have your Outlook for your schedule, right? Or something like that, some kind of local program on your computer that manages the calendar for everybody in the office. Then for documentation, you might have, we'll call them electronic templates or e-templates. And that's where you're basically maybe typing into a form on a computer, and that form then gets printed out or saved to a patient's file electronically, or it gets printed out and put into a manila folder if you're looking to back things up manually. Actually, in all three cases, a lot of practices today will still back things up in paper charts, which really isn't a bad thing, as long as it's not eating up a lot of time. And that's really what you want to focus on, is not spending more time than necessary. So if it's not taking you too long to back up your charts on paper, probably not a terrible idea. But that's our e-templates for electronic. And then for billing, billing is trickier. People tend to see still with electronic, you're going to have a way to get online. So you're going to need, we're going to call that online to clearinghouse, right? Where you're actually going to take your local, what we'll call them batches of claims, so groups of claims, locally, and then you'll go to a clearinghouse's website and you'll submit them, you'll pay a fee, and then the clearinghouse will then do the online piece for you and actually submit those claims and get them paid, hopefully. So now we've got our billing. So for practice management, this is still, unfortunately, with electronic systems that aren't online, you're still going to see this notebook Post-it situation. But what you might see in addition to that is the reporting excuse, right? The reporting story that you'll hear when people try to, or solutions try to lump practice management into scheduling, documentation, and billing. And so what you'll see is a combination of the offline model and the reporting from the electronic model. So the last group here is really online, and I'm actually going to leave these here because they actually, without putting online before them, it's really the same thing, right? So you want to have online scheduling, online documentation, online billing, online practice management, and so really what this symbolizes is a progression over time, where we had the first generation offline solutions, we had the second generation electronic solutions, and now we have the third generation and the most modern, which are your online solutions. That's why you're seeing a lot of solutions out there today now trying to catch up, either going after big money to help them pay for millions of dollars that it costs to take a software that currently exists as a local program and take it online. So online really represents a third generation, a modern approach. And the scheduling is going to be such that you're able to not only track everything on the cloud, which allows you to look at it from anywhere, right? But it also lets you really get into mobile devices from anywhere, so that you can check your calendar from anywhere. And of course, give patients access to their information and what they're allowed to view, on a device, right? So if I forget to ask for records when I go to my specialist, and I have a cloud-based technology, or my my healthcare provider has a cloud-based technology, generally you'll see something like a portal where I can actually, if I forget to get those records to go to my specialist, I can go to the specialist, pull up the app or pull up the portal online, and pull off the information I need. And so that really creates a really cool opportunity there. With documentation, it's similar, but you tend to see a little bit more communication between providers as opposed to patients. So in this instance, regardless of the solution, as long as it's cloud-based, there's this thing called ONC, or meaningful use, that requires certain communication between systems, so that no matter what system someone else is using, right? If I'm using a specialized system for my specialty, as long as my system has that certification, now I know that the other person, if they have a certified system, I can just send them notes directly. I don't have to have those notes printed and faxed or mailed or something. So this really keeps everything online and automatic. With online billing, now you're in the situation where, again, you don't need to be filling out forms, right? You don't need to be either locally or offline or electronically. Really what you're talking about here is the automation of claim creation, right? So now you're not actually having to populate claims manually, at least I hope not. But you're able to actually input just the things that are necessary and have the system pull everything else that it needs together and create the claim for you, right? And then, of course, you can build on that with rules and automated reporting and all of that. So the billing in there, again, we want to have that reporting built into each of those sections and not try to pass it off as a practice management tool. Practice management online is actually where it gets really interesting, and we can do an entire series, not just a video, but an entire series of modules on practice management. And this is where we're really talking about the ability to task manage, right? Workflow manage. So we're able to actually divide up by specialty within an office or by role within an office, and really do, at the very minimum, tasks, manual tasks, creation, and then automated follow-up on those tasks, so that everybody knows who's responsible and everybody knows that the work gets done. And if anybody is struggling, you're not managing by fire, so it's much easier to actually help that person. The next generation of practice management, which is really, really cool and interesting, is automated practice management, where the practice management tool is so well integrated that it actually looks into the scheduling, documentation, and billing, both from a workflow perspective and a reporting perspective, takes that information and automatically creates tasks, gives them to the right people to complete those tasks and actually follow up on them. So when it comes to choosing technology in your office, you're really looking at first generation offline, second generation electronic, and then third generation is going to be your online, your most modern technologies today, where you're actually able to bring all of these things together and have a practice management tool that does more than just reporting.